Everyone, good afternoon. Welcome to JIVINITI monthly live series where we connect the dots between public and planetary health. I'm your host, Priyanka, and today I'm so excited to welcome Dr. Leila Dehghan, an Iranian doctor turned plant-based personal trainer and nutritionist. Dr. Leila is passionate about food justice, health equity, and she aims to find effective ways to address racial and socioeconomic issues that prevent people from thriving in health. She's also a member of the advisory board for Plant-Based Health Professionals UK and has created a 21-day plant-based health challenge to encourage and invite more people to go vegan. Today, we'll be diving into Dr. Leila's transformational health journey, how her culture and identity have shaped her, and how to decolonize our diets. So join me in welcoming Dr. Leila.
Hi, Priyanka.
Hello. Hi. Good afternoon.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me on the program.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us here and welcome. So I would really love to begin with your plant-powered story because I read a little bit about your journey of combating debilitating migraines, which you've had since childhood and struggled with in medical school. And then you discovered a whole foods plant-based diet. So tell us a little bit about your journey and what was that pin drop moment where you realized and made that connection between diet and health?
Sure. Well, I made the connection long after, medical school and also actually a few years after I had already quit medicine. After I quit medicine, I became a personal trainer, and being a vegan personal trainer, people kept asking me questions about my diet, how it is, where do you get your protein? Anyway, so I was looking into learning more about nutrition, and I came across this conference called Nutrition in Medicine. And maybe because I used to be a doctor, I felt like, this conference is really going to go into nutrition, for health professionals. So let me kind of, go and attend it. And actually it was organized by the Plant-Based Health Professionals UK. So I went there and it was a one-day conference and I developed migraine, which wasn't anything unusual because, at the time I was suffering from really bad migraines. I had 18 to 20 days of headaches per month, and 10 to 12 of them were migraines. So I was kind of used to kind of living my life, but always expecting to have a migraine at some point. So anyway, I was sitting there with a throbbing pain, and I was listening to all these stories how food could actually help, cure all these diseases. And most of these diseases were diseases I had learned at medical school, and I thought, they are irreversible. You can't do anything about them. So I left the conference and I thought, okay, I started looking into a whole food plant-based diet because, the conference was about a whole food plant-based diet. And I learned more, but I still wasn't really ready to change my diet. But then 3 weeks later, I was invited to a book reading. I have co-authored a book with my sister, and we were invited actually to a book reading. And again, I had a migraine. Nothing unusual, but, I remember I was feeling sick before going into that room. And I went there. They asked me questions, I talked to people, they took pictures and everything, but I wasn't actually present. And after the event, straight away, I had to rush to the bathroom and I was sick. And I thought, is that my life? Even when something good happens to me, something that I should actually celebrate, something that I should be, excited about, I'm actually not present. I felt like my life was happening without me. So at the time I said, you know what, I'm going to try a whole food plant-based diet. And it was really overnight that I changed from a kind of vegan junk food diet to a whole food plant-based diet. And within 5 days, I started seeing changes. And yes, it has been amazing since then.
Wow. Wow, it really sounds like eating whole foods plant-based provided a new lease on life. And so you were vegan before and were already familiar with the vegan world. What had inspired you to go vegan initially?
I did it for the animals, and it is interesting. Nowadays, I meet a lot of people who go vegan, but they do their research. I didn't. I was involved in animal rescue, in dog rescue, and one of the animal, rescue, one of the fellow rescuers, she posted a video about how dairy and egg industry, the cruelty about in the dairy industry. And at the time, I was already vegetarian. And I felt like, that is it. For me, I believe in energy. And once I knew that the dairy products I was consuming and the eggs were actually kind of had this bad energy in them, I couldn't have it anymore. So I just went vegan without having any information about nutrition and how I should do that. I just eliminated, dairy products and eggs from my diet and carried on. So obviously my diet used to be bad. I carried on eating a lot of junk food, so it was a very bad diet I was having.
It's interesting you mentioned energy, because I think I'm making this connection now. Is your work is plant-powered chi nutrition, and chi is energy. So I'd love to talk a little bit about your work, actually. So what inspired you to become a nutritionist, fitness coach, and then inspired you to start and create this connection with chi and nutrition?
Sure. Well, I mean, after I quit medicine, I became a personal trainer because I believed exercise is preventive medicine. So I felt like, by kind of, being still in the fitness industry, I was helping people to be healthy and stay healthy. So it felt right. But then obviously when I discovered the whole food plant-based diet, I felt, wow, that is the missing part. Nobody had told me about it. And I wanted to go out there and tell people about it. I really felt it was my duty, and I still do. I feel like, I have discovered something which a lot of people don't know about. And I had gone to medical school myself. So, I'm sure there are a lot of other healthcare professionals who don't know about it. So, and I went back to university and got a master's degree because I felt like I really wanted to understand nutrition so that I can actually pass on the knowledge to other people. And chi is, for me, I'm a martial artist. I do kung fu, and before that I used to do karate. So chi means the energy. It is the energy which flows, within us. And for me, harmonizing the body, mind, and soul. And when we do that, when we harmonize it, we create balance in our body. And I think that is doing it on a plant-based diet with the power of plants. So that is for me the plant-powered chi. And this is a concept. It's more like a holistic approach I take to health, well-being, but also the way I actually approach social justice. I think we need to have a holistic approach to everything.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's very powerful. Wow. And so I would love to also talk a little bit about your identity and upbringing in Iran and how that shaped your worldview. Myself, I have multicultural roots in India and Ecuador, and so I recently read your article in Sentient Media, where you described how Western influence has led with this dairy and meat obsession, which is a topic that Nivi Jaswal, our founder, has also touched upon in the lens of India. So I'd love for you to share with us a little bit on your perspective in Iran, and why is it that Western diet has impacted developing countries?
Sure. When we look at the less developed countries, we see that there is this trend, this idea that anything which is westernized, almost like the Western lifestyle, is seen as a better lifestyle, of higher value. And that is not just the diet, it's also like kind of, doing exercise, for example, is seen as a Western thing, as a white thing, but also the way the Western people dress up, for example. Mm-hmm. So anything which is Westernized is seen as a better. But obviously, when it comes to food, to the Western diet, then it can have actually harmful consequences because, the Western diet is heavy in animal products, in processed foods. And, when we ditch our own traditional diets and adopt these, Western foods, which are high in animal products, and high in saturated fat, salt, and sugar, then we are also increasing the chance of developing all the so-called lifestyle diseases like obesity, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and some cancers. So there is no kind of surprise that all these diseases, the prevalence is actually increasing in countries like Iran and also like India. I know India has the same problem.
Right. So what was the diet like in Iran prior to Western influence? Because I know Iran was never actually colonized, and I think that's a fact that's really important to mention, but there's been a heavy Western influence in the country, especially in the last 30 years or 40 years.
Yes. Actually, the Western influence is quite large, and I think that's why a lot of people forget that we have never been actually colonized. And it just shows how the influence of colonialism, really, or maybe neo-colonialism, if you want to put it that way. When we look at the traditional diets of Iranians, and we have a lot of different ethnic backgrounds, ethnicities in Iran, we know that they used to be predominantly plant-based. Rice and bread were and are still the staple of our diet. Vegetables, herbs, spices, very, very important. Obviously, people used to consume goat's milk and make products, using goat's milk. Meat was consumed on occasions, and people who were living, near in the regions close to Caspian Sea or the Persian Gulf, they were consuming fish as well. But it was predominantly plant-based.
Yeah, you actually shared a scripture, Zoroastrian scripture with me when we spoke earlier from, I believe, the Aryan Stone Age, dating all the way back to 1100 BC, that indicates that vegan and vegetarian diets were present in Iran. So what does this piece of ethnographic or anthropological evidence indicate? The fact that it's been so deeply embedded in culture way before time.
Yes, it is actually an interesting book because Shahnameh, every Iranian knows Shahnameh. It's a book by the Iranian poet Ferdowsi, and it contains all these legends and histories of Iranian kings. So it's actually a very valued, a valued book, but I think a lot of people don't know about this poem, which is about the devil, which is called Ahriman. He actually seduces one of the ancient kings, and he said, let me be your cook. Let me cook actually for you. And he uses animal flesh. And the king wasn't aware of it. And by the time the king actually asked and said, oh, what did you use? It was already too late, because people had that meal and they enjoyed it and they were addicted. That's what the poet says. They were addicted to the animal flesh, so they couldn't actually go back. And what I like about this story is, firstly, that it shows that Iranians used to be with plant-based, but also that eating animal flesh was seen as something wrong. Moreover, eating animal flesh meant like kind of being slaves to the devil, really. Wow. So I think actually it takes it even further, saying that by eating animal flesh, actually you are becoming enslaved. And when you think of the ancient religion of Iran, which is Zoroastrianism, the teachings are really based on goodness. Good thoughts, good deeds, and good words. And if we think about it, not harming animals was part of it. So it makes sense that they were really, vegetarians or plant-based.
Right. Yeah. No, it's incredible how history can provide so much light onto diets pre-colonization. And you've actually also shared a book with me, I believe it's Philosophy of Liberation by Enrique Dussel. And I found this to be very interesting. And you shared that it helped you critically think about decolonization, not in what we consume just as food, but also in what we consume as food for thought. And so I'd really love to dive into this topic of what does it mean to decolonize the mind?
Sure. When we think of colonialism and the impact it had, we need to realize that they had actually to create a new framework. It wasn't just about, going and conquering lands. You had to actually change people's perception of themselves. So they had actually to reshape the ideas. And this framework I shared with you, and it actually creates two, a center and a periphery. And in the center, is it like kind of being European, being male? And there is also the logic, reason, the mind, all of that is actually in the center. And the periphery is being female, for example, being indigenous, but also the body is in the periphery, and intuition, emotions, the nature. So all of that is in the periphery. And the framework, the colonial framework says that actually being in the center means having the power. So if you want to be seen as a human being, if you want to be valued as a human being, you need to be closer, more away from the periphery, closer to the center. And I think if we think about, the exploitation of nature and the animals, that is how it was actually done, or it was made easier by actually thinking of animals and, nature as the periphery. So, if we want to change that, we need to decolonize our mind. We need to actually change the way we think. We need to question ourselves. The way we have always been said that, we should do certain things certain way. It just starts like kind of, by deconstructing our own way of thinking and the frameworks that we have been given and offered, at schools, through media and other, books even. So, yes.
Right. Yeah, that process of unlearning. Before we dive into how to go from the periphery to the center, to that place of power, I'd like to take this question of decolonizing our diet or decolonizing our mind a step further to how do you decolonize diet?
Well, I think, decolonizing diets, especially is about actually going back to our traditional diets, to our traditional foods, and using that as a way to kind of cure all the illnesses or reverse the illnesses that our communities are actually facing at the moment. And I think, we always talk about decolonizing diets, and because a plant-based diet, I mean, a lot of these ethnic communities we are talking about, they, their diets, traditional diet used to be plant-based. So we feel like, as soon as we are offering them a plant-based diet, we are actually like kind of, that is already part of decolonization. But I think we need to go a step further. The idea of a plant-based diet is not new. It's not a Western concept, although the word vegan was coined by a white man, really. The idea is not new. But even the idea of food as medicine is not new. In China, we have the Chinese medicine. In Iran, we have the traditional Iranian medicine, which uses a lot of herbs and spices to actually treat illnesses. And in India, the Ayurvedic medicine. So all these concepts are actually nothing new. They are definitely not the invention of the West. And I think that is really important for us to understand, because when we go to these communities, we go like kind of, yes, I have this new discovery, you didn't know about it. They knew. And if we go from that mindset, we are not going to be able to reach to them, to talk to them and make that change happen. So I think that is really important for us to understand. And then when we are promoting a plant-based diet to those communities, we need to be aware not to promote a Western type of plant-based diet, or the way a plant-based diet is done in the West. What I mean is, for example, I meet a lot of Iranians in Iran who tell me they cannot go plant-based because tofu is expensive. And I'm just like, why do you want to have tofu in your diet? Our food or our dishes have a lot of legumes. So by removing the meat, you don't even need to replace it by anything else. Just remove the meat, and that is already a plant-based. You don't need to do anything more. And I think, we go there and we say there is only one way of eating plant-based. And then the other problem is that a lot of white vegans, they veganize traditional ethnic cuisine. And they don't realize that that can actually have a negative impact, because people who have never eaten those foods, who never grew up with those foods, will never know how it should really taste like. And again, when you go to a community who already thinks that, veganism is a white thing, and a white vegan is, introducing those, traditional diets, they are not going to take, accept. And the other problem I have seen a lot is that, something which we use all the time in our communities, suddenly a white vegan, makes it fashionable and it becomes expensive. So, there are so many different things that we as a vegans, we need to be aware of and really treat it with respect. We cannot just go ahead and say, okay, you used to eat plant-based and here I am, giving you a plant-based diet. No, it doesn't work like that.
Yes, yeah. You brought up a really good point about reclaiming our indigenous traditional foodways. And I mean, the evidence is there that veganism has been around long before the concept of vegan was even coined, which, like you said, it was coined, I believe, was it the 1940s? Like not too long ago by
Yes.
a white person. And so, what advice would you give for someone who's wanting to reconnect back with their roots and reclaim their traditional foodways, plant-based foodways?
I think we always want to fight the system, and we don't realize that we have internalized the system. So the oppression, we have internalized it. And we hear a lot of people saying, you have to be the change you want to be, to see, you have to be the change you want to see in the world. That means if we want to change the system, we also have to heal ourselves.
Yes.
I think it is so important actually to kind of go in and change ourselves and see where have I actually internalized white supremacy. Because if we don't do that, even if we try to change the world, we are going to create systems based on the same values that we are actually trying to dismantle. Mm-hmm. So we cannot do this work outside without actually having done the internal work, Wow. So yeah. So I think we really need to work on healing our own traumas.
Yes, I absolutely love that and really resonate with that. So then now let's talk a little bit about how do you do that? How do you shift from the periphery in that framework that you mentioned into the center of power?
Well, I'm actually doing at the moment a course. It's a 3-month course in embodied social justice.
Nice.
I'm looking at embodiment. I think that is something we have forgotten. Where have I actually embodied those oppressions, those oppressive thoughts? And, how does it feel like actually to listen to my body rather than what I have been told to do? So I think it is a different approach, actually, what we are not used to be honest. But I think, that is where we need to start. Looking at ourselves, where have I, internalized something? And what would feel good, if I want to make those changes? And also reimagining a new world. I think, if we want to have a better world, we need to be able to dream of something better based on new ideas, not again based on the ideas that, yes, logic, reason, mind, that should be the center. Mm-hmm. It is hard work, but I think we need to do it at the same time. We cannot just do one without the other.
Absolutely. What's the name of the course you're taking again?
It's called just Embodied Social Justice Certificate. So it's a 3-month course. So yeah, it's amazing. I'm learning a lot.
That is incredible. And I am so curious. I would love to know more insights on that later. But I think it's absolutely incredible to, in that process of unlearning and recognizing what may be so deeply internalized or conditioned within ourselves, and then how do you release those notions and create new ideas and understanding of how to operate in the world. And so I think that's absolutely incredible that you're doing that. And so what else are you up to? What other projects are you currently focusing on?
Well, one of the projects I actually started 2 years ago was, trying to address the racism within food and health system, but also within the vegan movement, to be honest, because like everybody else, I want a vegan world. I want everybody to go vegan. But as long as there is racism, we are not going to be able to reach communities who have experience and who are still experiencing racism. So that is a project I started 2 years ago. It started as a video project, which I called Athletes, Food and Diversity. It was a small project, but as I'm learning more and doing all these different courses, reading books and connecting with other people, the idea is expanding. At the moment, I call it Food Justice and Race. I'm doing this course and I'm trying to just stay open, see what transforms and transpires after the course. But I'm also learning that it is really important that we collaborate. We cannot really achieve anything without collaboration. And especially white allies. We need white allies because we have to face it. They have the platforms. They have larger platforms. Usually they get more funding. So we need them so that we can actually work together. And it's not just because they have the platform. It's also because we are all interconnected.
Yes.
We need to each other, actually. We are social beings. And if we want to create long-lasting change, and I think that is what we want, really, isn't it? Then we need to collaborate and work with each other.
That's really powerful. Thank you so much, Dr. Leila. There's one point that I would love to talk about before we're out of time today is, what does it mean to ignite chi, ignite your chi? Because I saw that on your website and I really love that motto or phrase. And so maybe you can leave us with, how do you ignite your chi, and a piece of advice for others who are trying to?
I think it's about being mindful, really, because chi is the energy. So being mindful about what you eat, for example. A lot of the things we do every day, just because we are busy, to be honest, isn't it? We do it mindlessly. We are grabbing something to eat and do it. And actually, when we do it mindlessly, then we are more likely to eat processed foods, for example. So, being just mindful and present with everything we do. And then even when we are exercising, when we are working out, exercise is very important to me. Just seeing actually where does it hurt in my body? What is my body telling me? And harnessing the energy which is already within me, using that to actually move from there. So yes, just being more mindful.
Awesome. Ignite your chi. I really love that as a motto. So people can find you on drleila.com. Is that correct? Okay, amazing. So check out Dr. Leila's work at drleiladehghan.com to learn more about you and how to get involved in your projects. And again, thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Leila. Really such a pleasure to talk with you and to connect with you always. And thank you for helping us connect the dots between public and planetary health.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And until next time.
See you next time.
Bye-bye.